Over many years, on many hikes and camping trips with my friend Jim, we talked about many things: politics, environmental science, the nature of God. We talked most about his love for our children. Two of his four granddaughters were my own kids. And Jim talked for many hours about how challenging and inscrutable family relationships often can be, particularly with daughters. And many times over many years, he told me that he wanted to return to his childhood environs in the area of Worcester, Massachusetts. He had never been back there. He assumed that the several of his childhood homes had long been destroyed by progress, but he wanted to see the shopping centers or highways that now paved over these places. I carelessly promised that I would one day take him back there, without any plans in mind to fulfill that promise. There will always be time, right? There will always be another day to fulfill our offhand promises. But then my daughter Elan led the way back to Worcester. A senior in high school, Elan wanted to tour MIT. That was Jim's alma mater. It would be the grandfather showing his great school to his aspiring granddaughter, and it would be the chance to make that pilgrimage to Worcester. As it turned out, that tour of MIT would be just a sidelight to this remarkable trip. We could not have suspected that Jim's and his granddaughter's ancestors were waiting to greet us in Massachusetts. Well, that flight to Boston was on a nearly empty 727, and we felt like we were flying in our private jet. Now, out the window, we looked down on the World Trade Center, 45 days before the destruction of the Twin Towers. Elan Cherie and I had been to the top of the towers just the year before. Well, Jim showed us around Worcester. He showed us the office where he had first worked as an architect out of college. We saw the market still there where he worked as a kid. We visited his grade school, and we drove past his high school. Jim was surprised these places had all survived the march of time. So I suggested, shall we try to find where the old homes once stood then? Jim had compiled the addresses, and we drove into an old residential district. Remarkably, the first house we sought after still stood at the first address he'd given me, and Jim recognized one of his homes from 1932. But it was not just the old house that had survived. A codgery old guy came out on the porch and hollered at us for taking pictures. It was Murphy, the son who had inherited the house from his parents, who had bought it from Jim's family. That was only the beginning of this day's astonishments. Not far away, here was an apartment Jim had lived in, between houses, still standing. At the next address, the next childhood home, still there, still the same, and as if we had not found enough indestructible past places on this journey, out came the resident of this house, worried at our picture taking. She was the daughter of those who had known Jim's family when they lived there.
His name was the two architects that ran the place.
Did you bring a brush?
Adolf and Jasper. Adolf Johnson and Jasper Rastigian. Rustigian.
And that was this building right up here.
Yeah, that tall building.
You go to the bathroom on the roof.
I did.
Well, you worked on the penthouse, not the
Yeah.
roof.
It was South High School, the name of high school. I spent my entire 4 years.
Elon's a high school student.
Got a picture.
That is?
Yeah.
Now explain that to us again. This is your grandfather's house?
After we left Clinton, this is where we lived for a couple of years.
What year would you have lived here?
1932.
Does someone live there now?
Yes. I mean, you know, there was all grass lawn, and Grandpa used to stand on the lawn with a hose, and whenever anybody walked by, he'd squirt them with a hose. And there were steps that led up to the front porch. Grandfather, after my grandmother died, 1932. Just wait you up. Lived there about 3 years. Yeah. What's your name?
Murphy. I've been here 43 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Eva was here. Remember Eva?
Yeah.
On the top floor. And Eleanor. Eleanor Rowe. They were both on the top. I had to take the whole household. My
I
family.
can't remember. We left Worcester
Yeah.
in 1951.
Doherty owned that too.
That's right.
Yeah, Doherty. Both of those girls are dead. A lot of changes. No, I thought maybe you wanted to buy it.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Lived in it. That's interesting.
I have a picture. We took the picture. I have a picture of the house when we first moved in it at home.
Really?
And we're going to take a
Did he build
compare.
it? Did he build it himself, Mr. Vince?
I don't think so. I don't think
Okay then.
so. Well, nice talking to you, Mr. Murphy.
You too. Take care.
It's kind of a Back to the Future shot. It's a great neighborhood to be from.
Yeah, I know.
So you lived in that room right up the top, used to be a porch.
Just rocking.
Mrs. Kelleher.
Yeah.
That's Mrs. Kelleher's front porch.
Yep. And the Dailies lived upstairs. The Mrs. Daly, they were all school teachers. There was Mrs. Kelleher's
Not Miss Daly, but Mrs. Daly.
sister. Miss, and Miss Daly. There were 3 of them.
The Daly
All
sisters.
old age. And Mrs. Kelleher was their sister.
Oh,
She and Captain Kelleher, he was an ex-cop, lived downstairs. And they had, and then the daughter, Helen Kelleher, lived with them.
Helen Kelleher.
Helen Kelleher. Wow. Open.
So you didn't have the whole house.
No, we just had the second floor and one and the attic. We had one room where that window is in the attic. That was a bedroom there. We use it as a, you know, like, I don't know.
Where was your room?
It was on the other side of the house on the second floor. There were 2 bedrooms on the side of the house.
was an elderly woman that lived here. That the Ravellis were the last owners prior to us, and there was an elderly woman that they bought the house from, but she died just a couple of years ago, I guess.
Oh.
But she was very elderly, maybe in the 90s. Oh. Well, there's a
Winchester
cul-de-sac
Avenue
now.
was a dirt road then.
Uh-huh.
No sidewalk, just a dirt road.
Yeah.
And there was maybe 2 or 3 more houses, then it was just woods.
Uh-huh. Well, now behind there's a cul-de-sac.
Oh,
A
really?
lot of, at this end of the circle, which is right behind our property, there are some single-family ranches, but a lot of them are duplexes around the cul-de-sac. And then over there, of course, is the Clark Manor Nursing Home.
Yeah, well, that was nothing was there. You know, this was the
Now,
end
what
of
years
it.
did you live here?
From probably, Fred just asked me, I think it was from about 34 to maybe.
The next house was the most remarkable of all. Jim found his birthplace. Still standing, still the same. As you might guess by now, the occupants stepped out wondering why we were taking pictures. They were the daughters of the folks who had bought the house from Jim's family. They invited us in. When Jim clearly recalled the glass doorknobs that were still on the interior doors, we realized we had entered the bedroom where his mother bore him. I had been waiting for hours for the irony of this day's magic journey to show on Jim's face. He finally shed tears at this point. The next stop was the Silas Dudley House. It was actually a Massachusetts state monument. Jim's folks were historically famous then. But it was getting late. We had an appointment at another of Alon's college tours somewhere out in the countryside west of the Boston area. But we got lost, or rather I, the driver, did. Those rural New England roads wind incomprehensibly here and there from one small Middlesex to another village or town, all with a central square, a white church, and a graveyard. I decided to stop at one of these villages to ask directions. With no sign of life in sight, I spotted the rectory by the church and went in to knock on the door. I said to Jim and the girls, "Hey, go take a look in the graveyard. Those old tombstones can be quite interesting." Jim took the girls for a stroll in the graveyard. No one answered the rectory door. Then I heard Jim yelp. I thought he was hurt or in trouble. I ran to where he and the girls were standing in the graveyard.
It's the house you were born in.
Yeah. Hi. I was born in this house.
Oh, were you? My parents have lived here for about 33, 35 years, so.
I moved out when I was 5 years old. I was born here in 1927.
Really?
Old Mrs. Litchfield lived up here when I was a kid. I was a little kid. It was a mess because all the plants had closed. That was a favorite jumping place. People would kill themselves.
Yes.
Yep.
We've had
They
a
probably
few.
still do.
Yeah, few.
Few since
Few.
And I think you used to be able to see them from these windows.
Yeah, there's so many
trees
trees
in
in
the
the
woods
You can
and
only
that we
see the
can't see
train
it.
in the wintertime.
Hi.
Yeah.
Are we
So-
ready?
Yeah.
You
Well,
can go
this is
through if
interesting.
you'd like.
Yeah, because we lived downstairs and then we moved up.
Well, I had too many kids,
No,
so
I
we
was
needed
5
this
years
floor
old
and
when we
I.
moved out. Put those, my dad put the
All
glass
over.
door.
I've had a couple of the neighbors offer, and I want them.
There's one behind you then.
Yeah, he put all those doorknobs in. And he had, I don't know, did some decorations on the
nice. She's just a
plaster
puppy.
walls. I can't
Only 8
remember
weeks.
Yeah.
exactly what it was like.
So she's brand new.
We're
We just got her on
slowly doing it, like
Thursday.
the bathroom is
She came in from,
almost
And there was
done.
bedrooms
Got her from the
up
dog
in
shelter. She came in
attic.
from
Well,
Puerto Rico.
that's why I
They're all the
lived, when
abandoned
I bought
dogs
the
that
house,
come in.
we live here and upstairs,
My
because I
son
have
wants
5
a dog,
children
so we
and
got
2 brothers
Oh, yeah.
with me.
Here we are going through, to great extent, sneaking through backyards to find the Depression-era train trestle that people used to jump off of and was in view of the house that Jim was born in. And here it is. Here, I've been hearing about the train trestle the whole trip, but he said he never was on it before when he was a 5-year-old kid. And I don't know, Jim, from a purely historical standpoint, it might be good for breaking a leg. I don't think I'd come here to do myself in.
Okay, my great-grandfather's name was Silas Dudley, okay? And that was his house. And it's a real old house. It probably dates back into the early 1700s sometime. The house was not here originally. It was on the main drag over there someplace with a big barn next door to it. A huge barn, similar to that barn up there. But I don't think that's the same barn, but it was about the same size and it looked a lot like it. And I got a picture of that house. It was probably taken around 1900 with the barn alongside of it as it looked then. And there's a team of oxen out in front of it where they're pulling the oxen. And there. Yes. Absolutely.
No way.
Yes, it is. There's their names and their dates. And my dad's older brother and sister.
Your uncle, your aunt and uncle.
Do you know how unbelievable it is you've discovered this?
Yeah. And that must be the baby. They had a baby that died earlier.
Now, explain this.
Okay, that's my dad's father and mother. She died December 30th, 1926. I know that date is right because I was born in March of 1927. And she died shortly before I was born. And that's her name, you know.
You mean we just got out of the car at random to look at a cemetery?
Those are new. Those graves, I don't know, have no idea who put them there. But somebody put them there. They're new. You can tell. They're not old. Who put them there? I have no idea.
Who's Gracie and Willie?
They're my dad's brother and sister. They both died of TB when they were young.
And the baby?
The baby was another baby that died, I think, even before that. I don't know who would.
So just by purest chance, here we are, and there's your grandparents.
Yeah.
Silas. Oh, this is the guy that lived in the house, wasn't it?
Silas Dudley?
Silas?
Yeah.
24,
Wait, these are your great-grandparents?
Yeah.
This is Silas Dudley?
Silas Dudley and Deborah Dudley.
And they're the ones that own the red house at the museum.
Yeah. But
So I'm standing on the grave of your great-grandparents.
I have no idea who put them there.
Well, those aren't new.
No, but those are.
You don't have any pictures. Dad, come around to the back.
I've got to find out who put those graves.
So your great-grandparents,
Yeah.
Oh, look, Silas.
your grandparents,
You can see the name is clear on the back.
Silas Dudley and
Here's the baby's name.
there's the huge
Yeah,
Dudley.
the baby's name was Lottie D.
whose baby? Your,
Yeah.
So his cousin.
Oliver and Essie died 1878. June 15th, 1878.
About 5 days old. Is this all the people that are buried here, or do you think there's more?
Those are the only ones I know of, you know?
I'm just amazed.
Because
What an astonishing piece of family history.
yeah, you're right. I had no idea these were here. I figured if there was a gravestone at all, it'd be, you know, one of these old things. And I never expected to walk right into it.
We found more markers over there. Right here, get the back over here.
It's my grandfather's brother. Augustus
it's
T.
made by
Parker.
salt.
Yeah, he was like a sheriff or something like that. And they call him Uncle Gus, my dad did. And his wife, Mary Edna Willard. I can remember Aunt Edna. She was an old lady when I was a little kid. She was born in 1854 and died in 1953.
She's 99 years old.
Aunt Edna and Uncle Gus.
Uncle Gus and Aunt Edna.
Did you know Uncle Gus or
No,
just...
because he died before I was born. But I know who he was. He was a sheriff.
But you knew Aunt Edna.
Yeah.
And we're thinking that these are
They
her
lived
parents.
in town here someplace, but I don't know where.
All the cousins over there.
Okay, now these are Aunt Edna's parents.
Apparently so, yeah.
Well, wait. Doesn't say when he was born.
I don't know if he was Mabel, Eva, Aldo, or Grant.
I think they're over here. They're your second cousins.
Over many years, we had talked about this day that we would seek out the locations of these lost family homes. As the day unfolded, though, not only did we discover each of the homes still intact and still occupied by people who had known Jim's family, but we then had been brought unexpectedly to the graveyard, where we again encountered some of Jim's relatives whose homes those had been. It was a glimpse through the portal with Jim, nothing less than a sacred experience, defying any other possibility. After we had left the Dudley house to find the next college tour, we actually became lost in the winding hills of the rural countryside. The map was not helping me on those back roads. We stopped at an unmarked crossroads in the woods and looked around the fork in the road. I looked down and in one direction saw a large clump of bright yellow St. John's wort growing off down one of the roadways. I decided that we should follow the flowers. A few minutes later, feeling silly about that decision, I stopped at the next country church with the graveyard to ask directions. After the discovery of the relatives in the graveyard, pondering all the day's events, I suggested an odd theory. Aunt Edna, who had baked cookies for Jim, who had grown a garden with him, perhaps Aunt Edna had scattered those flowers along the road. She wanted to see little Jimmy again. Without irony or hesitation, Jim matter-of-factly agreed. That is what must have happened. I listened to a sermon recently about the places in our lives where these portals occur, where the veil is sheer. One such place for me is now in the Virginia mountains, where I return from time to sit with my friend and discuss politics, environmental science, the nature of God, and what it is to be a father.